What up, everyone? Welcome back to the podcast. This is episode 3. If you still with me, so I appreciate it. Thank you again for, man. Okay. Yeah, if you can hit that like button, subscribe, follow. All the normal, here and there stuff. So in episode 3, we're going to be talking about Zach, and in Zach's situation is basically. The question that I'm asking in this one is, can a man change his life without changing who he is? Because with Zach, we try to figure out who Zach is, because when you read Cross Paths, you find out who Zach is now. The backstory hasn't been even written yet, but it's outlined, so to say. But Zach in Cross Paths is successful, respected, disciplined. He comes from the street, so he's respected in the street life, but he's also created a self for himself at his workplace. He's moved up the corporate ladder, so he's respected at work, and he's still respected in the street. And he tiptoes between both. And he's very disciplined. He gets up in the morning, he eats a certain breakfast, he works out, gets himself together, certain cufflinks, certain watches, like he's very disciplined in who he is. And so, but he's still missing something. And I think a lot of men go through that, where we know what we want to succeed in life, and we know where we want to go. But if we don't deal with a lot of the internal things, we move up and people can see us move, but there's still a lot of unhealed things that's going on. And a person can look healed but have no peace. They have the job, they going to church, they seem very composed, but behind closed doors, like, man, I remember like hearing about some people, I'd be like, bro, he did what? Like, I would have, like, you done seen, or even like on like First 48 or like some crime shows, you'd be like, there's a lot of people that they interview and be like, I would have never thought he or she would have did such a thing. And I think that's kind of, how our past follow us if we don't learn how to manage our past, Because with Zach, he still had a street mindset with a different lifestyle, And then he knew how to switch it, because when he was at work, he knew how to have that corporate mindset, But then when he got it back around the streets, he handled things in a street manner. He got it back around his friends, or when he went around the old crew, he picked up where he left off. And it's like he was celebrated, though, at the same time. So he still had those things that he couldn't let go, because he still had a sense of peace when he would go to these places, because that's all he knew. And he never did the work to change. And I think a lot of times with us men, as we grow, like I said, we get to these places and we don't go to therapy, and we don't find somebody or be vulnerable with someone else, man or woman, that we can confide in about some of the things that we're going through, And I think with Zach, some of the things that he couldn't let go is because he thought he was done with it. Mentally, Zach knew he made it. He knew he was better than the people he was associated with sometimes. But he never understood that he was still there, because physically he wasn't, but mentally he was still in that lifestyle or still, quote unquote, doing those same things. And sometimes, you don't outrun your past. Your past just begins to manage you. You don't outrun that person you used to be. That person just kind of dictates who you are. Even though it looks differently physically, and like I said, it looks differently to the people that you associated with. You can go into corporate places and they be like, oh my God, like he's well spoken, he's blah blah blah, and he does a good job presenting and everything else. But like I said, behind closed doors, sometimes that that guy that you are, it comes out. And that's why sometimes a lot of guys and women too in the workplace, like they be ready to, don't make me be who I used to be. That's because that person is still there. That's because that person handles conflict. That person, when stuff is about to hit the fan, that's the person that comes up to defend you. And and sometimes people almost catch it at work, and sometimes people do catch it at work or in other places. That's why you see fights at work and at church and all type of places, because hey, don't let that person come out. And sometimes that person come out because we ain't fully healed from how we used to protect ourselves. So that's the thing that Zach struggles with a lot in the book. That person comes out and he's searching for himself in the workplace and in his personal life. Because to Zach, lust for Zach feels safe. I can sleep with different women. I can be out here, and lust for Zach feels safe, and love feel risky, because when he loves someone, it's a vulnerability. When you love someone, that's a little bit of accountability. So when Zach, he's been okay going from woman to woman to woman because there's no ties. I don't have to commit. I don't have to do nothing. We have a good time. I got a little money. They'll say, I ain't tricking if you got it. And he's cool. But then he meets Hazel. Hazel is where the tension comes in, because for whatever reason, there's a fear there with Zach and Hazel. Zach has an understanding that Hazel is different from all the women he has, spoken to up to that point. So Hazel is a risk for Zach. And without spoiling, sometimes when there's a risk involved, instead of being man enough to be vulnerable, you would mess up a situation. I'd rather, mess this up than to fail. And I know that sounds crazy, but I know guys that do it, or women that do it. You're like, man, like, I know this is a good dude, or I know this is a good woman, and the woman I dealt with before have been trash or not compatible, or it just hasn't worked. And then you meet somebody that is your person, and you still F it up. Everybody knows a person that did that, and then they put that shield on, or they put whatever that is on, and they act like everything is cool and everything is fine and whatever. And then 3, 4, 5, 6 months later, you got the boo-boo face, because man, you see somebody else with him or her, and you like, I messed that up. I dropped the ball. I dropped the bag. I fumbled it. And all because you can't get past yourself. That's the biggest thing. A lot of people can't get past themselves. And I think in Zach's situation, even though he know love is a risk, he don't fear love, but he fear being exposed to it. Because he know if a good woman loves him for who he is, then that's going to expose everything that he's been through. And that's going to bring out a side of him that he's been protecting. And that's what Zach fears in this situation. Sorry. You know, and I think a lot of times, you know, like in Zach's case, like in the first chapter, he says a prayer before he meets Hazel. And that's kind of like, you know, what leads up to this, because Zach wants this. A lot of times we pray for things we're not even ready for. We know we don't want this life no more. And that's where Zach said, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of being alone. I need a good woman to help. Like, I got all the money. I got everything I want, but I don't have nobody to share it with. And then when somebody comes along to share it with you, you F it up. That's what Zach is doing throughout some of the book, and you will see. And a lot of people do that also. Like, they will pray for a good woman and then get a good woman. And like I said, when you get a good woman or a good man, they bring something out of you that nobody has, and they hold you accountable, and they bring out all your fears and weaknesses and everything else. And you F it up. We F it up all the time. We see it all the time. There's a couple of celebrities I think have effed up situations. I'd be like, man, I thought she was a good chick, like, or I don't really know, like, we don't know celebrities personally, but from the outside looking in, it's like, bro, I think you messed that one up, or sis, I think you messed that up. And we know people in our personal lives, like, hey, she gonna regret that one, or he gonna regret that one, It's a lot of things. And I think a lot of times, a lot of guys, speaking on guys, like, I think a lot of times, we're just not disciplined enough, because when somebody comes along that challenges who you are, that requires real change. Like, not that shit you just say to people. I mean, real change. Like, when somebody is in your life that wants you to do better, that job you've been holding on ain't the job no more, because that person is going to want you to have a career. That person is going to want you to succeed. That person is going to want to see success in you and not want nothing in return. A lot of times there's like a give and take in relationships. Like, all right, you do this, I'll do that. You do this, I'll do that. When you got two people that's moving on the same, and hustling and grinding, hey, I want you to do good. I'm doing good. I got your back. And y'all holding each other up 100%, 100%. Not 50 and 50. Like, you put 50 and 50, you get 100%. And I know people have been saying this. So if I'm giving 100, you get 100. We got 200% going in our relationship. You putting 50, I'm putting 50. And I don't feel like it. And I don't want to give but 10%. We ain't giving but 60% in our relationship. And if you don't feel like giving 50, now we down. If you like, look, I'm giving 10 because you giving 10. Ain't but 20% going in this relationship. Shit. They're talking about that 80-20 rule. If I'm giving 10 and you giving 10, shit, fuck, 20%, somebody just give 5%. It's looking good somewhere else when nobody's giving nothing to each other. If nobody's giving nothing to each other, everything looks better. And I'm not saying you could be in a situation where you giving 100% and the other person is giving 50. Y'all might just not be compatible. Or both of y'all could be giving 100% and the relationship still doesn't work. That's the one thing I think, a lot of us were never taught how to find a compatible mate to be with, or helpmate, or person, or whatever you want to call it. We were not taught to find compatible relationships. And I think you can see two good people together and the outside is like, man, y'all are good for each other. Y'all are good for each other. But like behind closed doors, it's like oil and water. It don't mix. Even though everything's outside saying these two should be together, a lot of times, and because it looks good, we don't want to let go. Like, I've seen people say, I don't want to let go of the house. I don't want to let go of the cars or the finance. We got kids together or whatever it is. And it's not toxic, but it's not healthy though. You know, if you know what I'm saying. Because a lot of people just want to say, oh, the relationship is toxic. Like, not all relationships are not toxic. Sometimes two people are just not compatible. And it's just not healthy for people involved. If you got to fight for, you know, attention, conversation, affection, you know, like, man, like the person, I always say the person that you sleep naked next to, vulnerable, should be the person you should be able to talk to the most. Like, you literally naked with your eyes closed in a deep sleep next to a person that you are mistreating. That shit crazy. Like, the people do that. That is mind-boggling to me. That's the person that you most vulnerable with that you can't talk to. That is crazy, but it happens all the time. You know, I don't know if I could go to sleep next to someone, you know, man, like that's that yeah. Yeah. So that should be the person we should be able to talk to the most, you know. But a lot of times it don't happen. That's the person we talk to less, you know. And so I guess the question I'm going to leave you guys with, because I'm not going to keep you long, I just wanted to hit on a few topics. Can a man with a past love without passing that damage on? That's the question I'm leaving, that I want to see in the comments, because I'm going to start doing that, leaving questions to be hit up in the comments, and I'm going to try to respond to a few also. Then I'm going to be going live and going through some of the questions that I'm leaving also. So I just wanted to get on and hit this next topic. And, you know, like I said, I always promote the book as always. And if this conversation hit home for you, like, man, Cross Paths is available on Amazon. All the links are going to be in the description and in my bio. Please follow me on all platforms. Next episode, I'm going to be talking about Jackie and pretty much survival versus self-destruction. And like I always say at the end of these videos, stay blessed, say less, let God do the rest. Peace.